11:32 a.m., June 23, 2025, the USS Fitzgerald, DDG-62, a U.S. Navy guided missile destroyer, cuts through the narrow waters at 18 knots. Suddenly, alarms blare on the bridge. The ship's radar warning receiver screams, "They are being targeted." Above them, just 80 meters off the deck, a dark green Iranian Navy helicopter hovers, rotors chopping the thick summer air. Its targeting pod locks onto the Fitzgerald's bow. Crew members freeze, weapons tracking upward, fingers near the trigger, but they're already too late. A flash beneath the chopper. A Nasser-1 anti-ship missile ignites, smoke trailing as it arcs downward toward the destroyer's forward deck. Impact comes 3 seconds later. Boom! A violent detonation tears through the ship's upper structure. Antennas shatter, communications cut out, and one Phalanx CIWS gun is completely disabled. By sheer luck and rapid damage control, no one is killed, but 14 sailors are injured, 2 critically. This is no warning shot. It's a direct strike on a U.S. warship. What would make a nation Washington dismissed? As a regional lightweight dare to strike a U.S. Navy destroyer head-on. And how would America, with its unmatched naval power, respond? Come to the end to analyze this shocking clash in the Persian Gulf, why it happened, how it escalated, and why it could spark a war. And leave your comments below updates from the world's most dangerous waters. The USS Fitzgerald, DDG-62, cut steadily through the blue-green waters near the Strait of Hormuz, part of what the U.S. Navy routinely calls a freedom of navigation transit. For the crew, it was another day under the blazing Persian Gulf sun, until every radar warning alarm aboard the destroyer suddenly screamed. Iranian shore-based radar had locked onto them. From Bandar Abbas Naval Air Station, an Iranian Bell 214ST helicopter roared into view, its belly bristling with a short-range Nasser-1 anti-ship missile and a 12.7mm heavy machine gun fixed to the side door. The Fitzgerald's bridge crew followed protocol immediately, broadcasting a sharp VHF message. Unidentified aircraft at bearing 210, range 1 mile, disengage and depart immediately. There was no answer, only the low growl of rotors echoing over the waves. At 11:32 a.m., the Iranian pilot made his move. A sudden exhaust flash burst from the helicopter's launch rail. A Nasser-1 missile streaked down toward the Fitzgerald's bow. Seconds later, the ship shook violently. Antennas splintered. One Phalanx CIWS gun twisted in its mount, and a spray of shrapnel ripped across the deck. Damage control crews raced forward, sealing compartments and flooding the impact zone with foam and fire suppressant. 14 sailors were injured, 2 critically, but the ship's armored deck held. There was no hull breach. Commander Kevin Harlow, gripping the bridge rail, gave the order that would define the moment. Target locked, requesting rules of engagement clearance. For the first time in over a decade, an Iranian aircraft had actually hit a U.S. Navy warship. Within minutes, the White House Situation Room was on the line. CENTCOM's response came fast and cold. Execute immediate but proportionate retaliation. The quiet transit was over. A new confrontation had just begun. This clash was not an isolated event. It was the latest step in a long chain of confrontations that had been building for years. According to U.S. Navy records and Defense News Archives, Iranian forces have harassed American warships at least 85 times since 2021. Each incident pushed the line of acceptable behavior, and each one forced Washington to weigh whether to escalate or hold back. In 2022, Iranian patrol boats seized a U.S. Navy Saildrone Explorer unmanned surface vessel, towing it toward Iranian waters before reluctantly releasing it when U.S. helicopters arrived overhead. The images of Iranian sailors posing with the captured drone made headlines worldwide and embarrassed the Pentagon. In 2023, the amphibious assault ship USS Bataan was shadowed by armed Iranian fast attack craft for 3 days straight, forcing its deck gunners to remain at their stations 24/7 with weapons hot. Tehran broadcast footage of the encounter on state TV, framing it as a victory for Iranian sovereignty. By 2024, Iran raised the stakes further, running a full-scale simulated strike drill against a replica U.S. aircraft carrier. The exercise demonstrated a strategy the Pentagon had long feared: swarming drones and salvos of shore-based missiles designed to overwhelm the defensive systems of even the most advanced carriers. Iran publicly claimed it could sink a Nimitz-class vessel within minutes. This strategy is rooted in what Tehran calls asymmetric naval warfare, using fast attack boats, mini-submarines, loitering drones, and precision anti-ship missiles like the Noor and Abu Mahdi to offset America's size and technology advantage. The June 2025 strike on the USS Fitzgerald marked an escalation beyond harassment. It was a deliberate attack. It signaled a shift. Iran was no longer just testing America's patience. It was testing its power. Iran's naval power is often underestimated, but its combined forces, the regular Iranian Navy, IRIN, and the elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, IRGCN, field an estimated 43,000 personnel, a number greater than the total manpower of all 6 Gulf Cooperation Council navies combined. Source: IISS Military Balance 2024. Unlike the U.S. Navy, which focuses on global power projection with large carrier strike groups, Iran has built a fleet tailored specifically to its own backyard, the confined shallow waters of the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz. Fast attack craft, over 200 Paycap-class boats, each armed with rockets or lightweight torpedoes, designed to swarm larger enemy vessels. Mini-submarines, the Ghadir class, optimized for operations in shallow coastal areas, capable of laying mines or launching short-range torpedoes. Anti-ship missiles, the Nasr 1 for short-range precision strikes, and the Abu Mahdi cruise missile with a 1,000-kilometer range, capable of threatening ships even outside the Gulf. Drone carriers, the Shahid Bagheri, a converted commercial vessel capable of launching swarms of kamikaze drones and loitering munitions for both reconnaissance and offensive strikes. Electronic warfare and AI surveillance systems, integrating drones, satellites, and coastal radar to track targets and coordinate attacks in real time. Iran has spent decades perfecting close harassment and saturation strike tactics, a doctrine specifically designed to exploit the Gulf's narrow channels and shallow depth, areas where U.S. carriers and destroyers cannot maneuver easily. In military exercises, Iran has even managed to simulate strikes on full-scale mock-ups of U.S. aircraft carrier decks, successfully hitting them using drone swarms and missile volleys. This arsenal gives Tehran confidence and the ability to challenge even a technologically superior adversary right at its doorstep. The strike on the USS Fitzgerald left no doubt. This was no warning shot. The missile impact scarred the destroyer's forward deck, disabling one of its phalanx CIWS guns and scattering shrapnel across the superstructure. 14 sailors were injured, 2 critically. In Washington's eyes, this was an unacceptable escalation. A line had been crossed. 11:35 a.m. The Fitzgerald's Aegis combat system immediately locked onto the retreating Iranian Bell 214 ST helicopter. Red targeting icons glowed on the combat display, but Commander Kevin Harlow held fire. His voice was steady, but his jaw was tight. "Hold your fire, repeat, hold fire, requesting immediate strike authority." A flash message shot out through encrypted channels to the 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. U.S. vessel hit by missile, 14 wounded, weapons system damaged, requesting strike clearance. 11:40 a.m. At U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM in Tampa, analysts watched live telemetry from Fitzgerald. Within minutes, The incident appeared on the White House Situation Room screens. National Security Advisor, Secretary of Defense, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs leaned over maps and satellite feeds. The president's voice cut through the tension. "This is an armed attack on a U.S. warship. Execute proportionate but immediate response." 11:47 a.m. On the flight deck of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, CVN-71, two FA-18E Super Hornets roared to life, loaded with AGM-154 Joint Standoff Weapons, JSOW. An EA-18G Growler launched moments later, jamming Iranian radar frequencies. Above the strait, a MQ-9 Reaper drone had already located the exact launch site on Keshem Island by tracking residual heat from the helicopter's missile pod and exhaust trails. 11:55 a.m. Strike clearance came through. Package cleared hot. Engage. The Hornets climbed sharply to 18,000 feet, well outside the reach of most Iranian short-range air defenses, and released 4 JSOW glide bombs. Each weapon autonomously adjusted its fins, locking onto pre-programmed coordinates: a helicopter hangar, an ammunition depot, and 2 radar installations. 12:15 p.m. The bombs struck with surgical precision. The first hit shredded the ammunition depot, igniting stored rockets and fuel. Secondary explosions ripped through the complex, fireballs rising hundreds of feet into the air. The second and third weapons flattened the hangar that housed the Bell 214 ST helicopter squadron. The fourth severed the radar link protecting that sector of Keshem Island. Iranian anti-aircraft guns roared, tracers streaking skyward, but the U.S. aircraft had already turned away. Onboard footage later released by the Pentagon showed calm pilots and HUD cameras capturing the explosions below. No U.S. aircraft were hit. Within minutes, Iranian state TV broadcast images of burning hangars and twisted metal, denouncing the U.S. strike as an act of war. Iranian naval patrols surged out of Bandar Abbas, but none dared engage directly. In Washington, the Pentagon issued a statement that carried a sharp edge. The United States will defend its forces and respond decisively to any attack. By evening, the U.S. Navy had shifted additional assets into the Strait of Hormuz. The USS Laboon, DDG-58, another guided missile destroyer, moved into escort position. A KC-135 aerial refueling tanker repositioned to support continuous combat air patrols. P-8, a Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft, increased surveillance of Iranian coastal batteries and naval movements. On the Fitzgerald, damage control crews worked around the clock, welding steel plates over the damaged deck and restoring comms. Helicopters ferried the wounded to a field hospital in Bahrain, where 2 sailors underwent emergency surgery. The message to Tehran was unmistakable. America had been struck, and it responded instantly with precision and overwhelming force. Yet even as the U.S. demonstrated its resolve, analysts warned that this was only the opening chapter of a dangerous escalation cycle. Iran would not take this humiliation lightly, and its allies were already watching closely. The U.S. strike on Keshem Island was still smoldering when the diplomatic shockwaves rippled across the globe. Moscow reacted first. The Russian Foreign Ministry condemned the American retaliation as a reckless act of aggression against a sovereign state, demanding an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. Russia's defense ministry went further, announcing that elements of its Caspian flotilla would increase cooperation with Iranian naval forces. Beijing quickly followed, warning that regional stability is at risk. The Chinese Foreign Ministry hinted at the possibility of People's Liberation Army Navy planned deployments to the Indian Ocean, citing the need to secure vital shipping lanes. Both Russia and China had already been deepening military ties with Tehran for years. In 2022, the 3 nations conducted joint drills in the Gulf of Oman, practicing anti-access area denial tactics designed to keep U.S. forces at bay. In 2024, they held another exercise in the Caspian Sea, simulating combined operations against naval and aerial threats. Now, those drills seemed less like symbolic gestures and more like preparation for real-world coordination. With Iran under direct attack, the prospect of multinational alignment against U.S. presence in the region suddenly felt tangible. The Pentagon publicly downplayed the risk, but inside the Situation Room, analysts were blunt. Any sustained conflict with Iran will not be fought against Iran alone. The incident had moved beyond a bilateral clash. It was teetering on the edge of a great power confrontation. The sea grows eerily calm after the chaos. Smoke still curls from the damaged bow of the USS Fitzgerald as it limps toward Bahrain, escorted by a second U.S. destroyer. Marines stand guard on deck, rifles slung, eyes scanning the horizon. Inside the ship, medical teams work tirelessly as helicopters evacuate the 14 wounded sailors, 2 of them in critical condition. In Washington, cables flood in from embassies worldwide, allies expressing support and adversaries seizing the moment to condemn. In Tehran, state television declares victory, broadcasting the fiery wreckage of the Qeshm Island strike as proof of American aggression. The strike on a U.S. destroyer is no longer harassment. It is a direct challenge, and America has answered instantly and brutally. But with Iran backed by partners, how far can this go before it spirals out of control? This is the reality of a multipolar world. Advanced weapons, powerful alliances, and narrow waterways where even a single spark can ignite a global fire. What do you think? Will this escalate into open war, or will cooler heads prevail? Comment below this video and subscribe to the channel for more frontline analysis from the world's most dangerous waters.